that on? It's on the end?
Yep.
Great. Yep. Good evening.
Good evening.
Great to see you. Good afternoon. Bonjour.
So good.
See you. All right. Let's take our Bibles to Ephesians chapter 4. We'll go ahead and look there. Again, I want to say, as I did say this morning, thank you for your gracious, warm hospitality. As always happens when we're here, we're so thankful for that, and always enjoy getting to be amongst you. Now, I have a message here, and I'm going to share it. I also want to give you the opportunity tonight. I want to just sort of share this and teach it with you. I contemplated even just sort of sitting down the middle here and chatting. So if you have a burning question that you'd like to ask as we go, because there's a couple points in here that are going to challenge the standard Christian mindset, and I'm doing that on purpose. So if you have a burning question, I welcome you to ask. Just pop your hand up and we'll go with that as we go. We are live, right? So we're online, so I have to be a little careful what I say. You know, I can't say all those things about Steve I was planning to say.
They're all true.
They're all true. Don't believe what they say. No, I'm joking, of course. But again, thank you. I had a great day today. Really great spirit this morning. Really appreciate being here and glad what Steve prayed earlier too, praying for Pastor and Jeannie while they're having a week's break. And thank you for praying for us as well. I rang my family this afternoon to say hi, and most of them ignored me, but Cassie did say hello to everyone as well. And I'm sure the boys, you know, it was a choice between Bluey and Dad, and Bluey wins about 3,000 times out of 100. All right, so you know, that's pretty much how that one goes as well. All right, Ephesians 4. Now, to introduce this, we're going to jump into a verse down later in the 20s, but we're going to start up here at verse 17. I'm going to read from there. I'm going to read from verse number 20. But the concept here, what's going on now. So here's what we do when we break up a book, right? If you're studying how to break up a book, you want to come up with what's the main theme in the book. In Ephesians, the main theme is the riches we have in Christ. And the first half of it talks about what we have as those riches. It talks a lot about salvation, eternal inheritance. Then the next 3 chapters talk about our responsibilities. Because we have the riches in Christ, chapters 4 to 6 is like, this is how we should live because of that. So if you look at the start of chapter 4, you would see there that it talks about us walking worthy. In fact, 5 times in chapter 4 and 5 and 6, it tells us how we ought to walk. Walk worthy, walk in love, walk in light, and so on and so forth. So this is really a practical part of the book, and it's teaching that to us. Now, as we then break down into each chapter, as we're doing now and look at it, in chapter 4, we have this concept around the oneness at the start of what we have in Christ in church. Verse 11 to 16 tells us about a big part about why we have church, why we have pastors, that we would grow up together into this body in verse 16. That's really good. And then verse 17 says, and also, so we wouldn't walk in the way that the Gentiles walk, or basically how we used to walk before we were saved. So we've been given that, and we talked a bit about that this morning, didn't we? That we've been given these great things that God has given us in this age, the Bible, the Holy Spirit, church, and so on. So as we think of that, because he then contrasts here from verse 17 to 19, the old walk, and he says in verse 20, but ye have not so learned Christ. If so be that ye have heard him, Christ, and have been taught by him, Christ, as the truth is in Jesus. Now, if you'd say that's me, I've heard of Jesus, I've been taught by him, I get to live in his truth because I'm saved, you can say hallelujah to that. Then verse 22, that ye put off concerning the former conversation, or the old way of living, the old man, which is corrupt according to the deceitful lust. So, old man here is not your pop, okay? Old man is the unregenerate man. And of course, we know as saved people, because when you got saved, when you got born again, your spirit got quickened. But this body didn't get saved yet. It's promised that it will, but you get that new body at the resurrection of the saints' rapture.
Amen.
And so you get that then. And so right now, we're still living in this flesh. As Romans says, it wars against us. But we've got this new regenerate spirit. So here, there's this illustration, a bit like getting dressed. He says, put off the old man. Then look at the next verse. It's going to talk about the mind. And be renewed in the spirit of your mind. You notice that? Notice the order here. And many of you know, of course, through the week I run a coaching business. And my coaching business is called Transform You. It comes from Romans 12:2 and from this verse here. Transformed by the renewing of your mind. It's all about the mind. So he says, first off, you've got to put off that old. Then be renewed in the mind. So renew is kind of like a daily renewal, a daily newness. Like I've got to think new. I've got to think differently. And here's a great exercise. It's not a message, but here's a great exercise for you to do. Who here hates hearing their own voice played back? Anyone done that? Someone plays me preaching, I'm like, who is that guy? And it's me. But here's what I wanted you to challenge this week. Pick one day and listen to what you say. And write a list. Put a big line down the middle of the page and put on one side words I need to use and on the other side words I need to lose. And you'll find a lot out about yourself. Because you'll hear some negative talk and some they're not bad words. They're just, wow, that was really pessimistic. Here I'm saying how great God is and how awful this is. Like it just you'll pick it up really quickly if you do it. Okay? So this renewing of the mind, and then he says, verse 24, and that you put on. It's kind of like be renewed in the mind so you can put on that new man which after God is created in righteousness and true holiness. In other words, you've got this born again spirit, you've got this old flesh. Which one are you going to walk in today? Which mindset are you going to walk in? Now, this is all just introduction because I want to focus on one or two verses here. What we have from verse 25 to 32 is actually a passage I've used at, I reckon, 15 weddings I've officiated at. Because if you look at the construction of the next 8 verses, with the exception of verse 30, because there's an inference, each of these verses is constructed with an old man behaviour, a new man behaviour, and a renewed mind reason. Did you get that? An old man behaviour, a new man behaviour, and a renewed mindset. And I'll give you the example here. Look in verse 25. Wherefore, putting away lying. Which man do you reckon lies? It's not a trick question. The old man. The old man's a liar. So, putting away lying, like putting that off, right? Speak every man truth with his neighbour. Who does that? A new man. Now, here's kind of the reasoning. For we are members one of another. Right? So can you see the construction there? And this is helpful when you're doing a study to sort of realise what, putting those dots together, okay? Jump down to the very end and have another one with me in verse 31. Let all bitterness, and there's a list of things here, be put away. What do you think they are, old or new? Old. Verse 32, and be kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving. What do you reckon that is? And here's why. Even as God, for Christ's sake, hath forgiven you. New mindset. See, old mindset says, I might forgive you if you're lucky and you earn it. New mindset says, I've got to do it because it was done for me. I did worse to Christ than you've done to me. See how it changes it? Old thinking, new one, and leave it out. And here's the reason. Have you got that?
Yep.
So that's the construction of these verses. Now, I want to take you into something here again, which is a little bit coachy for me. It's sort of the realm I deal with through the week, but it helped me in my own Christian life. And I'm going to share a little bit about some of the things that happened for me a few years ago as well, if we get there. I want you to come down to verse 26. Be angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath, neither give place to the devil. What's this mean? What's it saying? Now, one of the areas I deal with in my through the week work, and again, some of my coaching work is with pastors, some with business people and so on, I deal in the area of emotional intelligence too. It's one of the things that I do. And that might be one of those buzzwords. Some people say, oh, I've heard a bit about that. Someone's like, what's that? Someone's like, here we go. Think about intelligence, just as we might do an IQ test, and our intelligence will develop and grow as we grow. Our intellect is stimulated, we learn, we study, we practice, we grow. Our IQ develops and grows within its natural parameters. Well, if you think about emotional intelligence, it's along the same lines of saying, and it's a question for us, is how emotionally intelligent are we? One of the definitions for emotional intelligence is a way of recognising, understanding, and choosing how we think, feel, and act. Think, feel, and act shaping our understanding of ourselves and interactions with others. Now, we've all met people who've never had a thought before they acted, or before they spoke, right? Then, some of us can have so many thoughts we never act. Oh, yeah. So the concept of emotional intelligence is around understanding and you know, reading the room to some degree, but when we think of ourselves, when I teach this in you know, workshops and what, we talk about emotionally intelligent me and then emotionally intelligent we, the group. So we think about, if we start with ourselves here, I want to take this verse and show you something here. And I'll ask you this question. How emotionally intelligent are you? And don't answer it out loud. I'm really intelligent, right? And, but think about what might help you with that. And I've got a little handout I'm going to give you in just a moment. I want to start here by talking about language, and then I'm going to come to the verse here. Your self-talk, language. And before, like I said, the line down the page. One of the things that I've learned in the last few years is how destructive to your health it is to suppress emotions. And yet somewhere along the line in a lot of Christian circles, we've come up with this language, well, that's a bad emotion. I shouldn't feel that. And we've started to create this, it creates a deeper sense, I think, of Phariseeism, where judgmentalism goes even beyond judging the actions, which, hey, careful if you do that, is that really your realm? To then now we're even judging, you know, within that inner thought, and when we're doing it to someone else, guarantee we're doing it to ourselves. It's very destructive. It's particularly destructive to children. Parents, if in the room, or perhaps watching on the live, if I could encourage you to get rid of the language, the words you might want to lose are, you shouldn't feel that. And telling someone else how they shouldn't feel, how they shouldn't feel. In the coaching world, we call it shoulding all over yourself. When you tell yourself you should, or you, and I don't know, I use it, it's like, yeah, it's meant to make you think. Your ability to use emotion, to use language, to explain emotion gives you a greater sense, ability to be emotionally intelligent. But the more words, the more language I have around emotion, the more chance I have of having my emotional needs met. You say, well, that's a bit selfish. No, not really. Because a big part of relationships is, you know, discussing how you're feeling, how you're going. Think about the psalmist David. When you read some of the Psalms, aren't you blown away by his expression? I mean, do you remember, I remember being like maybe 10, something like that, when I first read David saying, Lord, kill all my enemies. I was like, are you allowed to say that? But he had these words to express it. So I'm going to give you a little handout, and then I'm going to explain the verse, not where I'm getting there. Ben, can you help me out here? And how many have we got? Yeah, I've got about 12 of these, so maybe one per couple or what, and we'll do that, okay? There we go. So we'll do that. I want you to think, this is just something we call the emotions wheel. And what we have here, I'm going to explain this to you as I go along. Have you all on it? Yep. Okay, now, this here, you can get this off Google, so don't worry, it's nothing too special. I've got some others as well. I'll tell you what I do in our house, and again, each their own. We actually bring this out about once a fortnight at our dinner table, and put it in the middle of the table, and I ask the kids, I'll say, tell me which of these you felt today. And then I'll get them to say, would you like to know what one of these means? And Alistair, for those who don't know Alistair, he always asks for the biggest word. He's like, tell me what this word is. Good one. He loves to go for that. Now, you're having a giggle, some of you, as you see it. And what's happening right now is see how your brain's going, oh, I'm not sure I linked that with that, or maybe that one's funny. But see what it's doing? It's giving you avenues to express that. Because sometimes people come along, and you know what, most people express the emotions of happy, sad, glad, and mad. And never get beyond that. People say to people, what do you want to be? I want to be happy. And then if you actually dig into that, you can go, and I don't have one up here now, someone tell me a word that goes off happy, goes out from the centre, out. Tell me a word that comes in. Content. Yeah, is it contentment you want to feel? Or another word. And see how, by using that language, you can give yourself and others a fuller understanding of what it is you're actually feeling. And if I can do that, I have more chance of being able to have those needs met. Whether it's couple, work. Hannah, we had a discussion today about workplace. If someone could actually articulate that and you could articulate it back, what might that be able to do? To be able to generate good discussion going forward. Okay? And for me, it's that way with kids. Because those of you who have been parents and remember when your kids were little, remember when they were so little you knew they were hurt but they couldn't tell you what was hurting? Oh, it breaks your heart, doesn't it? You know, they're like, oh, and you're like, oh, is it appendicitis? You know, you're like, are you dying? Is it just a sore toe? And, and you want to know what it is. And you know what? In adults, a lot, that's what it is. We're hurting and someone else is trying to figure it out. And what if we could actually look and say, you know what, it's actually, no, it's not quite that. It's, and you say it out loud, actually it's this one. And you can work it through. Now, keep that, and we'll refer back to it in just a minute. The thinking caps are on, which is good. It's important for us to recognise this. Now, when we know better, we can do better. So when I expand my vocabulary, I can do better. When we know better, we can do better. And it's good because I can say to my kids, tell me which one of these you're feeling. It can open up a conversation when someone's doing the, how are you? Oh, wow, everything about you says you're doing really all right. You know, it can open up that kind of conversation as well. Now, taking this a little further, I want you to think about the process of emotion, thoughts, and action. We were having this discussion at lunch too, that often in life when we see something coming toward us, what we're judging and evaluating is the action they did. Oh, they're angry. But actually, anger is the emotion. Let's think about what the action is. And here's a question for you. When you feel something, what comes first? The thought and then the feeling, or a feeling and then the thought?
Feeling.
Mostly it's a feeling, but it can be a bit of both, can't it? And then it cycles, doesn't it? I have a thought, a feeling, and then I have another thought, which leads me to another feeling, and I have another thought, then a feeling, you know, and on if I go, for good or bad. Now, here's the thing, what I said earlier. What I've seen come into Christianity, and I had it in my life, is like, well, you shouldn't feel that, don't feel that, don't. And what we're doing is, we're wanting to get all the way back there and control it there, when actually the emotions and thoughts are something in our control that we can do something with, and I'll teach you through the process in a minute. Once you get to the action stage, it's no longer in your realm. Because let's give an example. If I am feeling a bit annoyed at Ben and, you know, whatever, he's ticked me off today, and then I walk over and I punch him in the arm. Well, now it's outside of my control because he might turn around and punch me in the face. But before I do that action, I can go through some processes to think, do I want to remain in this feeling? Should I be feeling that? What else can I do? And I can go through thoughts and emotions, right? But once I get to the action stage, you know, that I give away some of that control over what may or may not come back. The problem is, too many times we're not allowed to validate emotions and people are like, oh, stop thinking that, instead of letting it have a process. And I'll show you that in the verse here. So stay with me. And again, pop the hand up if you want to ask something. Let's look at our verse here in Ephesians 4, verse 26. Be ye angry and sin not. Now, if anyone's bold enough, you're welcome to. What does that mean? You know what it used to mean to me, in my mindset, was, oh, if you don't be angry, you won't sin. You know what it does mean? Is be angry. Correct, Nerida. You're absolutely right. He went into the money, throughout the money change, and he uses the word there. He was angry. So here's a question before I go further. Are there some things in this life that if they happen, should, and I mean right or wrong, should make you feel anger?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. So if we don't validate anger, do you see that that's suppressing something there that might be a part of the process you're supposed to go through? I mean, God forbid, but if someone, you know, took one of my children, and do you not think that part of going through that, one of those stages is going to be anger? talk about another one, like lust. Can you say that in church? Yes. So Jesus said, don't lust after someone else's wife, and he said that in Matthew 5, so yeah. But lust is a feeling. It just means to strongly desire. Of course, we most liken it, of course, to the sexual area of life. But what we've done with something like that is almost said, like, even in a marriage, people shouldn't. And it's like, well, hang on. Isn't that Jesus said, don't lust after someone else's spouse? He didn't say you're not supposed to have desire for your own. You get the point? So anger is one of these ones. He's saying, be ye angry. Now again, if I was to use other translation, which of course, that's what we've got, King James, but you'll find that if you were to read this, someone will be like, when your anger has effect on you, don't sin. In other words, you're going to have those things come. So when we talk about this in the coaching world, and be, remember we're a human being, not a human doing. As a being, the concept is be angry, meaning it's going to come at times. There are some things that are going to come. Now what you can do, like I said earlier, is you could be, what I've been is like, oh no, I shouldn't be thinking that, don't validate that, and suppress it. And guess what normally happens when you suppress something? There you go. What you resist persists. And it will... And anger that's suppressed and blows up gets pretty bad. Our society sees that a bit, unfortunately, because in society we do this too. You noticed in the last, I'm 42, I reckon in the last 20, 25 years, there's been a real concerted effort in society to take away any masculine aggression. Now, I'll stand here and say until the cows come home, domestic violence is wrong, and violence, there's very few times in life where violence should be the thing we resort to, and so on and so forth. I am glad we have an army that will defend us. So there are some times we need all that. But violence isn't the answer, we know that. We're people of love and so on. But God made us, so you're really clear on that, right? Like, man shouldn't hit a woman, man shouldn't, like, do you need me to say any more than that? You got the clarity on that? But God has also put within us, and some personalities, male or female, might lead to more intensity. And if there's not an outworking for that intensity, we're teaching to suppress. Hello? There's a lot of kids today, we're labelling with stuff that's not a label, it's just intensity. But because it's not what we like in our society, we're putting that over here and saying that needs to be treated. Are you with me? Now, I didn't say, I'm not taking away the validation of all of those things. I work with clients every week with ADHD and autism, and you go through it. I'll give you an example, anxiety. People come to me and they say, I've got anxiety. I say, no you don't. What? I say, no you don't. No one has anxiety, because I turn it from a noun into a verb really quickly. You're doing anxiety. Because there was a time you didn't do anxiety, and there'll be a time in the future you're not doing it as well, so you're doing it right now. But you see, when you turn it into something I have, now I've got it for the rest of my life. So be angry is I'm doing anger right now. But there was a time before that happened I wasn't angry, and there'll be a time later on I'm not angry again, so I'm not an angry man who needs anger management. I've just got anger right now. And anger could be intensity, it could be another word. Are you with me? So be angry and sin not. It's like, well, that visited me because, I was just driving around the corner and someone cut me off and nearly ran into my kids and that made me angry. Now, what do? Be angry and sin not. Keep coming through. If you're taking notes, I want you to note, please. Emotions, all emotions were made by God. So I love what Nera said because Jesus exhibited, we would say, righteous anger. He was angry and sin not. But all emotions are made by God. So when you say that emotion is negative or bad, you're saying God shouldn't have made it. What we might say is the action I did when I had that emotion was not good. So now I want to go back and look at the trigger for that and work that through so I can make good decisions. But allow that emotion to be your teacher, because when something brings you anger, it's showing you something. And then you get to say, did I view that correctly? Was that a good way to look at that? Was that helpful, resourceful, or not? But push it away. Because I had this while I was pastoring. I had this thing of many conflicting emotions, and some of you know the stories, of course, in the last sort of 18 months or so before I stepped down. Of course, you know, my mum passed, and Cassie had a brush with bowel cancer, and we had a family in the church. We had a man murder suicide. I had a close missionary friend that his wife was raped in front of the kids, and we had a lot we were dealing with there. We had some other school issues going on, and I had my own stuff. And anyway, I could go on all night, you know. But what I was doing was I was like, no, just put the brave face on and off we go. And I was managing my outward state, but I was not managing my inner man. And it caught up with me, got the better of me. Took me to some dark places. And my learning there is that, okay, don't invalidate the emotion. I tell you where it came out for me a lot. It was in my dreams or nightmares. And one of the things I want to say to you, and this is not in your verses, I got that, this is me coaching me, telling you, so you can throw this one in the bin if you like, but I come from a school that says that the dreams, and often we go through those cycles at night, we only generally remember the last one or a really vivid one. Your dreams are essentially they're metaphors that outwork the unresolved or unprocessed emotions of the day. So if you had something that went through the day and you didn't get to process it, or you didn't want to process it and you pushed it down or what, it tends to come out in that activity. And guess what? If you didn't do it yesterday and the dream didn't even get to finish it, guess what happens tomorrow? Now you've got a double dose. So I'm not sitting here saying every person's ever had a nightmare. No. But I'm saying there is a great thought there that you go through, that the metaphors that come out, and they, you know, what do dreams mean? Well, what do you think it means? I don't know. I've had someone like, I know what that meant. I know what was going on there that I needed to deal with. But that process is going through with unresolved emotion. Consider that. Emotions often give you a physical reaction, don't they? What happens to someone when you know they're in anger? What do we say? What's happening here? What colour do they go? Red. Smoke's coming out of the ears. You know, when you say to someone, are you okay? Because they don't look okay and they say they're okay, what are you going on? Words or look? Something's in their being. You know? Yeah, I'm just great. You didn't believe me, did you? And it's not because of what I said, it's how it's the physical response. So those emotions do that. So, as I say, there's some learnings there. Now, so we come back to the verse here, let's look at it really quickly, and I've got to finish here. Be ye angry and sin not, because the old man would do what? He'd get angry at what? Yeah, sin. Wouldn't care, like who were hurt, or, you know, taking it out on whoever. You're on my way, buddy, so here we go. Now, notice this. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath. So the new man, it's going to come. But you're going to be proactive in doing something with it. It's taught me something. So I'm not invalidating that emotion, because I'm a human being, God gave me emotion, emotions express. But I'm going to do something in a timely manner with that. And then notice the clincher, neither give place to the devil. Question. When you've invalidated emotions, if you ever have, or suppressed something, have you ever given place to the devil? See, giving place to the devil doesn't mean, you know, I punched him in the face. It could be just everything I said. He got a hold in your life because you didn't want to deal with that, you didn't want to have that conversation, you didn't want to go there, and it stopped you from doing the will of God. Or it stopped you from, you know, making that decision or going for that thing, and, you know, asking, receiving, seeking and finding. It stopped you from moving ahead. It can be an omission or a commission. Because you gave place. You know what giving place means? It's like inviting something in, making room for it. And if I stood up here this evening, before we'd said all this, and just said, who thinks we should give a place to the devil tonight to sit in here? You don't know. You see how subtle it can be? The old man gave place by just uncontrolled, you know, not even thinking about it, just off I go. And then the danger for some Christians is we go the other way, we gave place because we suppress. When actually what God's saying is be angry It's going to happen. And let's pick another emotion. Pick anything you like. Do it and sin not. How should the new man do it? Don't give place to the devil. Yeah? I said lust before, so what I'm saying, what I'm saying. So, you're a human being. You have these things called hormones. Guess who gave them to you? And they're good. And less and more will have a physical effect on the body. People are older can tell you that. Doctors can tell you that. It just goes that way. It's not bad. You know, you tell a teenage boy who's high in testosterone post-puberty, don't feel that. How do you help him by saying don't feel that? You don't. Right? Just we don't want to talk about it because we don't want to talk about it. And then what do? And then we wonder why a young man had an acting out thing and now the church is very judgy and acting out. Like, what? Hello? What if we had a discussion about that? Maybe that would help. There's an example. So, I want to say this to you very boldly. I want to just put it out there and say you don't need to control whether or not you feel something. Some feelings come really quickly. You weren't expecting it 30 seconds before it came. There's no sin in that. Be angry and sin not. But now you're still above that action line. You've got a choice to make. Anger has visited me. What will I do with it? Will I lash out and yell at my children or yell at my spouse or, post something nasty on Facebook or tell my boss to, take his job and whatever? Or will I say, okay, anger's visited me. What's the process I need to go through so I don't give place to the devil? Make sense? So the power is everywhere above the action. Now, one more little thought here and I'm going to finish with a process. The earlier you bring awareness to your own emotion, the more power you give yourself to do something about it. Alright? If you're at this point when you go, actually I'm angry, very hard to pull back from that one. But if you can recognise it earlier for what it is, you give yourself more options. Now, this is where I'm talking about the renewed mind. Because we all have thoughts and brain patterns that we just do automatically without thinking it. Which is why I really want to challenge you with the language I use, language I lose. Because you might end up generating some emotions in your life because of your mindsets, that if you renew the mindsets, you might find that that will help with when those emotions visit you, or maybe less or maybe more. Because if you get on that paper and you realise, actually, I was really pessimistic today, and actually I'm like that every day, would God want me to be that way as a saved child of God? And with my pessimism, what other emotions come along with my pessimism? Is that honouring to God? Okay, if I was to swap that language out and be a little more optimistic, and I'm not saying, if you're a natural introvert and analytical, I'm not asking you, be fake, don't do that. But if you were to bring some optimism into it and then measure that day and say, what emotions did I feel today? Because we are told in Philippians, aren't we, to think on these things. Just, pure, lovely, honest, of good report. We're told to proactively do that. And it's amazing, isn't it, when we alter the attitude, what might come in the emotional space with it. Now, I'm going to let you know a little secret, those that aren't married, and married ones can laugh, or maybe say, no, we never do this. But I think I said this today. If I was to look at Cassie and I wanted to find fault, I could. You know why? Because we've lived together, we've been married for 16 years. If she wanted to look at me and find fault, she couldn't because I'm perfect. No, she couldn't because she's lived with me for 16 years. But how do you reckon our marriage goes if we do that? Who wants to be there? Not us, not the kids. But I can look at the same person and truthfully say, what am I thankful for? Same person. And it's not about whether she tells me to or not, I can do that. And if she does that, what do you reckon happens? What emotions do you think we start to generate? See what I'm saying? One might give place and one might not. So don't invalidate the emotion, but allow it to be your teacher. And say, I've noticed lately I'm feeling this a lot. What's that teaching me? What might be going on? Okay, now let me give you this last thought here. Just on another good place to delve in, feel free to ask a question or what, you can turn the camera off. I want to give you a really quick process for experiencing the emotions, okay? So I'm not saying it's rocket, foolproof, it's just something I do. So you can write this down really quickly. There's 5 simple steps. The first one is welcome the emotion. Have a good old chat with yourself. Oh, hello, anger. It's Monday. What are you doing here? And then you realise it actually comes every Monday because I don't like my job. What's that teaching me? Allow yourself the space to welcome that emotion. Rather than saying, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. If I say to you right now, don't think of a pink elephant. How many people thought of a pink elephant? Yeah. Because you had to think of it to not think of it. That's how the brain works. So that's why don't language very rarely helps. If you say to someone, don't do that, which is what we're talking about work today, don't do that, they have to think of it, but rather you tell them what you want them to do. Say, do this, is very helpful. So welcome that in, not welcome it in, welcome and say, okay, acknowledge it, and then identify it. Call it for what it is. You've got an emotions wheel there, is it really that, is it that? And then ask yourself, what's the trigger? Identify the emotion and what the trigger was. What was the trigger that leads me to feel sad? Then validate the feeling in the sense of, I'm allowed to feel X. It's okay to feel X. And I'm going to sit in that emotion for just a moment. I'm going to give myself, you can literally time yourself, I'm going to give myself 60 seconds to feel this right now. I'm going to allow myself to feel it for 60 seconds. Because then at the end of 60 seconds, I can choose where I want to feel it. Try it. You look at me like, try it. Try it. And ask yourself as it sits there, ask yourself, where do I feel it in my body? Because often we do. Often we do. Where do I feel it in my body? Wow, my cheeks got red. I can feel myself getting a bit hot under the collar. How does it feel to sit in this? Do I want to keep sitting in this? So you're leading yourself. And then lastly, express the emotion in I'm going to use this word resourceful because I don't want to use right or wrong because it's a bit cloudy. But express the emotion. So, I could express my anger. I could walk down there and punch Wayne right in the face. Was that resourceful? No. What else could I do? I could journal it. I could sing, play an instrument, go for a run. What are the things that I can do? And you see what you're doing, you're becoming emotionally intelligent. Because you're giving yourself processes by which to deal with that. And if you're thinking, I don't think you are, but if you're thinking, oh, this is a bit wacky, okay, just because we're doing it in the emotional realm, think of it in the physical realm. If your temptation is, ice cream and cake every night, what else could you do? Go for a run, it's the same thing. It's just taking the process and saying, I'm going to interrupt that process and do something that's helpful because that's new man behaviour. Because new man says, I'm going to put off the old way and put on the new one, but to do that, I've got to renew my mind. So am I renewing tonight? And come on, talk to me. What have we learned here? I don't want you to tell me. Because we've learned, my renewed mind can say, I don't have to be angry, but my renewed mind can say there's times I will be angry. So we could go through a few things there that we've just picked up, and we could apply that, of course, outside to other things as well. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Now, if you want more homework, if you're like, that's you, you could do that with each of these ones here. Like, see the pattern again? Verse 28, let him that stole steal no more. So what was the old man? He was a thief. Rather let him labour, but the new man's a worker. The old man's a bludger, the new man's a worker. That's in the Aussie version, okay? And I don't know what I mean by that. Is he's doing something, and then here's why. Doing that which is good, with his hand the things which is good, that he may have to give. Because you see, the old man's a taker, the new man's a giver. Can you see the pattern? It just goes on and on through the verses. So it's a really good pattern. But of course, our focus here is on the emotional stuff. So I hope that helps. I hope you'll look at that verse now and see some other time you might come across something like anger and go, it'll be healthy. I'm sort of looking over here for me because you young ones, I hope you don't have to fall in the trap I fell in. Okay, so allow yourself that gift of, I can validate that and be like, I'm feeling that at the moment. I don't have to be all ashamed that I felt that. Because I felt it, I acknowledged it, I looked at it, and I thought, what should I do with that? And then I did something smart. And you know what I'll do? I'll come over there and high five and say, that is awesome. That is so good and so powerful. And that is a great way to keep the devil out there rather than in here. It really is. All right, let's pray. Father, thank you for the time of the word. Lord, I do appreciate we've done something a little different tonight. And thank you for the liberty with which to do that. Thank Pastor Jackson for his invitation to be here, and thank the church as well. And Lord, would you help us as we journey into this week in Jesus' name. Amen. When we're finished, obviously, if you want to